All right, our first guest today was here with us last week, and I can't believe he wanted to come back. But for some reason, we're welcoming Reinhardt Brucker back again today. It was great to have you on last week. You know, it was funny last week. I think I mentioned it on the show. You were looking around here like, well, what are these guys talking about? You had a good time, and you're back this week.
Well, thanks for having me back, guys and ladies. And we're going to have some more fun talking about some topics that are real hot topics today.
From Realty USA.
That's it.
What's hot?
What's hot? I get a lot of people talking about foreclosures and flipping and things like that. Regularly, people on my website are looking for things about buying, foreclosures, etc.
Let me interrupt right there. Sorry, right out of the gate. I thought that was old news, that flipping was not a cool term anymore.
Well, it depends on who you talk to, because with all the TV shows on and everybody's doing flipping, and what's interesting is the TV shows make it look glamorous.
Right.
And I don't know, do you remember years ago they had This Old House with, I forget the host, but
yeah,
they used to come in with a budget of like $50,000.
Bob Vila.
Bob Vila.
Yeah, I thought it was Pat Sajak, but whatever.
The Wheel of Fortune
The
guy?
Wheel of Fortune guy. But they made it look so easy. Of course, they had this gigantic budget, and everybody goes out and tries to find that type of budget in Rochester, and it's a little bit more of a challenge.
Right.
But
Aren't you a flipper, Pat?
I have not, by definition, flipped. I've bought the house, remodeled everything in it, and lived there in the home, a couple of them.
You haven't bought it, remodeled it, and then sold it again?
No, not right away, no.
yeah, back in the 80s, when things were 18% interest,
Yes.
unlike today, I was buying, selling, flipping. I'd bought and sold about 64 of my own units. And one of the things I learned about doing the work myself is when you're roller painting a ceiling, you don't stand right under it with your eyes and your mouth open.
Yes.
Because you get all kinds of little freckles and stuff like that.
Bet you learned that in the first house, right?
Oh, yeah. But I found out that it can be profitable. You have to follow the rules. But back then, we had to be real creative with the financing being 18% interest.
Yeah.
So everybody talks about, it went from 3.5% to 4%. I was like, this is a cakewalk. You got to be kidding.
But you have to be somewhat educated in the real estate market in order to succeed, because you can't, agree with me if you want or disagree, but you can't just go ahead and throw $50,000 as an arbitrary number at one house, because it might bump it out of the price range to resell it, where it's profitable, right?
Absolutely right. And that's where a realtor, of course, that's self-serving, comes in handy, especially somebody who knows how to do it, which I've done. I have a benchmark for myself and my clients. When the client calls me, I tell them you probably want to have a benchmark of making a profit of at least $10,000. If you're going to make less than that, it could get eaten up in closing costs and carrying costs and all the things that go along with that. So it could end up being a nightmare.
Yeah.
I've heard these infomercials, companies that will sell you a list of foreclosures.
Well, they call it pre-foreclosures.
Yeah.
That's kind of a misleading term, because when you talk about pre-foreclosures,
I guess every house is a pre-foreclosure.
it is.
If you think about it.
Yep.
But the general public, what do you think they think of? What do you think of when you get a pre-foreclosure list?
This one's ready to go.
It's ready to go, and it's usually before anybody knows
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's-
You're on the inside.
That's wrong, because by the time the pre-foreclosure lists get published, it's probably at least 2 weeks old. There's a local periodical that has all the legal happenings called the Daily Record. I think you've seen it. And every day that's published, that's where you want to go for your foreclosure notices, because at that point, it's fresh and it's brand new. But then you got to go through the learning process and the learning curve.
Is it easy to get involved in that world, or is it the same people who get all they know about it ahead of time and they get in the door first?
Well, it's easy to get involved, but it's dangerous to stay involved and get burned, so you have to know what you're doing. But there are a handful of people locally that regularly go to the courthouse steps and buy those. So you're competing with people who are somewhat savvy.
See, because I remember, I guess you got to do it for the first time once, but I remember when the place across the street was a restaurant, and they were going to sell all the fixtures and all the pots and pans, and I went over there because I wanted to buy one frying pan. And I found out, well, you can't do that because some guy's going to gobble them all up, some guy who goes to all the auctions. And I kind of sense it's the same thing when you're looking for maybe your first foreclosure.
It is, but they don't take every single one of them, because there's going to be a savvy investor who's not going to want that one house that maybe you're interested in because you got more time to put into it. You're willing to take less of a profit. So they are out there.
How can it go bad? I mean, you kind of touched upon it a little bit.
Well, it can go bad if you don't do your research. What I do for myself and for my clients, first of all, I never compete with my clients, because no one deal's ever going to make or break me. So if a client says, find me something, what I've done in the past is I've done the analysis of what it's worth now in its present condition and what it will be worth when it's done, depending on what the client tells me they want to do. If you want to put in gold-plated faucets, it's going to be a little bit less. But I tell them to focus on ROI, which stands for return on investment. In the commercial world, when we do commercial, they call it a cap rate. What that means, it's short for capitalization rate. How fast is my investment going to capitalize? In other words, a fancy way of saying, how fast am I going to get my money back? If I put $20,000 into this, I'm just picking a number, and the first year I get $5,000 back, my cap rate is 20%. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to get 20% ROI or cap rate, that means I'm making a 20% return on my money. It's if I put $20,000 into the bank and they give me 20% interest. Mm-hmm. Where can you do that? Not in the bank.
No.
Lately. So if you can do that kind of term, it makes perfect sense.
I was under the impression you try to make your money right away.
Well, you got capital gains to figure in there too. So depending on the tax bracket you're in, you got to talk to a tax preparer and you find out if this is going to cost me a 30% gain tax after I sell it. If I make $20,000, I'm going to have to take whatever percentage I'm in, the federal and state, and pay that out. So you still got to figure that out.
Does this all make sense to you?
Absolutely. But I have one more answer to that question. The question that you asked, Steve, of how do you get burned on it, or how does it become a loser? Surprises. Surprise is a big factor. If you buy a house on a foreclosure and you go to estimate what it's worth, and then surprise, the foundation is kind of caving in, so it's got to be reformed, redug out, and redone. That can blow your profit right out of the water.
Absolutely right, and that's why I always recommend a property inspection.
Yep.
You know, it's a couple $100. It's a cheap insurance, and you avoid things like that. But I agree with you, Pat. The one thing you can't see is what's behind the walls. Like, let's say you want to take a wall out and move it and make a bigger dining area. Suddenly you go into the wall and you find a pipe that's riddled with asbestos. Oh, yeah. Well, suddenly you got an issue because you got to take care of that properly.
Seems like a lot of work.
It is.
Well, it is. But if you want to make $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, it should be a lot of work.
Are there people who do it just because they can or just because they want to do it? Is there like an inside thing that's almost...
it's a chip in your brain.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's almost like a habit.
It's not for everybody, but by the same token, if you can get past the, and enjoy it while you're doing it in the process, and it's a people business like everything else, because if you're going to keep it, you're going to have tenants and so on and so forth, but we'll talk that in the next segment too.
Yeah, and I also I got something else in mind for the next segment as well, because I figure there's got to be some people who say, I'm going to flip this house, and they say, no, I think I'm going to keep it. Does that happen very often?
It does.
Right.
It does. I'm one of them.
Are you? Well, I'm eager to talk more about it. I mean, when we talk about flipping houses, and again, you don't like that term.
Well, he doesn't like the term.
You don't like the term.
Yeah, no. It's old news, old school.
I've got some other statistics on some of the other parts of the country, too, which we'll talk about.
And we'll be back right after this. It's Property Source Radio till 10 o'clock right here every Saturday on Sports Radio 950 ESPN.